Welcome back, everyone. We're diving deep today, going way beyond sunflowers and starry nights.
Yeah, this is about getting into the head of Vincent van Gogh himself.
We're not just looking at the pretty pictures, we're talking personality. How did who he was as a person come out in his art?
Exactly. And for that, we're using the Enneagram, specifically type 4, often called the individualist.
Right, so they have that need to be unique, authentic. But I understand there's a layer to this.
There's a subtype, the self-preservation 4. Think of them more like, the tenacious.
I like that. And Van Gogh was definitely tenacious, wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
Over 2,000 works in such a short time.
It's remarkable. And he actually said, quote, "I always feel like a beginner," which can be a pleasant feeling and often a pain in the neck.
Oh, I feel that, even not being a famous artist.
Right.
Yeah.
But for this type 4, it goes deeper than just wanting to be good. It's tied to their self-worth.
Ah, so the achievement is who they are in a way.
Exactly. So there's this constant need to improve, to refine, to prove, well, something, even if just to themselves.
And that plays out in his art.
Think about it. The emotional depth in those paintings, the way he captures a place, a person. It's like he poured his whole being onto the canvas.
You know, it's funny you say that. I've always felt a certain rawness when I look at his work.
That's the double edge of this. Type 4 sensitivity, they feel everything.
The good and the bad.
And that fuels their art, but it also makes them more vulnerable. Which kind of leads us to a tougher part of Van Gogh's life.
That tendency to push himself to the limit. The man worked until he dropped, sometimes neglecting his health.
And it goes back to the Enneagram. It's not just being stubborn, it's this deep struggle with any limit.
Like stopping means failing to them.
In a way, yeah. And that pressure must be immense.
Makes you wonder how he didn't burn out sooner. Speaking of which, we can't avoid the topic. His self-mutilation.
It's a very sensitive area. Of course, we're not diagnosing, but
But it feels like an extreme version of something we've been talking about.
for some with this personality, enduring pain, it can be a way to feel something when they feel empty inside.
Tragic. He wanted beauty, connection, but always felt like he wasn't enough.
Which brings us to another contradiction. His poverty alongside the elegance of his work.
Right. This guy lived in squalor, but his art is so refined. And his letters show he loved beauty in even simple things.
This is key. Type 4s crave beauty, depth, even while feeling deficient.
It's like finding beauty of every struggle, almost.
That's one way to look at it. Now, consider how Van Gogh wasn't afraid to push artistic boundaries.
His style was revolutionary. The way he used color, that movement. It's like he wanted to go beyond what the eye could even see.
He wanted to express something internal, to connect to something bigger. And that's so type 4, this drive to transcend any limit.
So it's more than just a pretty picture.
Way more. It's expressing his inner world, pushing boundaries, defying what was expected, and creating a legacy that's still powerful today.
And all this drive, this intensity, it wasn't separate from his struggles.
It was all tied together, fueling his art and his demons.
Makes you think, would we even have those iconic paintings without that turmoil?
Now, that's a question that gets to the heart of personality, creativity, the human experience itself.
It really does. That's what makes exploring Van Gogh so fascinating. We're not just looking at pretty pictures. We're getting a glimpse into his soul.
A soul that was both brilliant and troubled. A soul that took all that inner turmoil and made it into art that still resonates with us centuries later.
And that's why this goes beyond just art history, right?
Absolutely. It's about recognizing that even in darkness, there can be incredible beauty.
That's a powerful thought. So we've touched on this constant search for beauty, for meaning. How did that actually play out in Van Gogh's life? Did he ever find what he was looking for?
Well, that's a question we'll dig into in our next segment. We're going to look at how Van Gogh's personality shaped his decisions, his relationships, and ultimately the legacy he left behind. So that search for beauty and meaning, it really was everywhere in Van Gogh's work.
Yeah, just look at what he chose to paint. It wasn't like grand historical stuff or fancy portraits.
Right. It was everyday life, nature, the working class, things people usually overlooked.
And that's what's so cool. He found beauty in the mundane.
Exactly. Sunflowers dying in a vase, a regular chair, that night sky. It's like he made the ordinary extraordinary through his art.
You know, it's true. I can't even see a field of sunflowers the same way after knowing his paintings.
He captured something universal in them, which goes back to what we were saying about type 4s.
That deep longing, that need for connection, meaning, beauty.
But they often struggle to find it inside themselves, so they look outward.
Through art, through relationships, through just experiencing life, super intensely.
And with Van Gogh, sometimes that intensity took a dark turn. His self-destructive tendencies.
It's almost like he embraced suffering in a way.
Again, not diagnosing, but his letters do show this acceptance of hardship, almost like a test of his dedication to art.
Or even like self-punishment almost.
Yeah, think about how he chose to live in poverty often.
Spending what little money he had on art supplies instead of, like, basic necessities.
He even wrote once, "What is drawing? How do we learn it? It's working through an invisible iron wall that seems to stand between what one feels and what one can do." Powerful stuff.
It's bleak, but does it connect back to finding beauty in the struggle?
I think it might. For someone who felt so intensely tied his self-worth to achievement, maybe enduring pain was a way to feel something real when everything inside felt chaotic.
Heavy stuff.
Yeah.
But it does make you see his choices differently, like his move to Arles in the south of France.
Oh, that was huge for him artistically. He was drawn to the light, the colors, the natural beauty, believed it would unlock something new in his expression.
And it did, in a way. That's when we get Sunflowers, Starry Night, The Yellow House, those vibrant, alive paintings.
He was pushing limits, trying new things, and the results were amazing. It shows how much he wouldn't settle for the ordinary, how much he wanted to grow as an artist.
It's funny because when I picture Van Gogh, I think isolated, alone. But he did have relationships, right? Especially in Arles.
Oh, he did. He craved connection like anyone. And despite his troubles, he made deep bonds, especially with other artists.
Like Gogh.
Yeah, he even dreamed of starting an artist colony, this place where everyone can support each other, inspire each other.
So it wasn't just about the art, this need for something more.
Not at all. Remember, Tab 4s look for fulfillment in lots of ways. They want deep relationships, acceptance, belonging.
And how did that go for him? Did he find that peace, that connection he wanted?
Well, it wasn't always smooth sailing. That intensity, his emotional ups and downs, made relationships difficult.
The one with Gauguin ended pretty badly, right?
It did. That's when he cut off part of his ear. A really tragic example of how his struggles, his inability to kind of reconcile his desires with reality, led to self-destruction.
Man, that is tough.
It is, but it shows how complex this personality type can be. That capacity for deep feeling, for intense connection, is often right alongside a huge sense of pain and alienation.
Makes you wonder, was that intensity, that struggle, part of what fueled his art?
Hard to say for sure, but it does highlight that link between personality, creativity, being human. Van Gogh was full of contradictions, you know. He craved beauty, connection, but was often surrounded by darkness, isolation.
And yet he achieved artistic excellence, but struggled to find inner peace.
Exactly. And despite all that, he left this legacy that's inspired people for centuries. His paintings are more than just pretty pictures. They're like windows into a soul that truly lived and felt.
Someone who took all that turmoil and made it into art that speaks to us, even now.
And that's what's so powerful about art. It transcends personal struggles. It connects with something universal.
So even if Van Gogh didn't find that lasting peace or connection in his life, maybe his art helps others find it.
It lets us connect with his pain, his yearning, his passion, and ultimately with our own shared humanity.
Powerful stuff. And that makes me think about the spiritual side of Van Gogh. He was pretty religious when he was younger, wasn't he?
He was, yeah. But even though he moved away from organized religion, that search for something bigger continued.
So even without the church or anything, that need for transcendence was still driving him.
Absolutely. And that's common with type 4s. They seek meaning, purpose, something beyond the everyday. Sometimes it's spiritual, sometimes it's through art or relationships.
And with Van Gogh, it sounds like all those were kind of woven together. Art expressed his spiritual side, nature inspired him.
Exactly. He saw beauty in the simple things, something divine in the ordinary. And he expressed that with such intensity, people are still captivated by it.
It's like he was trying to capture the essence of life itself, you know? The good ain't the bad, the struggle ain't the transcendence, all mixed together.
And maybe that's why it resonates so much. It speaks to our own search for meaning, for connection, for something more.
Yeah, it reminds us that even with all the struggles and uncertainty, there's beauty to be found, meaning to be made, connections to be made.
And who knows, maybe understanding someone like Van Gogh, as complex as he was, can help us figure out our own paths a bit better.
That's a great thought. But before we totally wrap up, there's one more thing. Earlier you said Van Gogh's personality made relationships hard. But what about his brother, Theo?
Ah, yes. Their bond was incredible. Even with the distance, with Vincent being unpredictable sometimes, Theo was always there for him. emotionally and financially.
Wow. So amidst all the chaos, he had someone who truly believed in him.
He did. And for someone like Van Gogh, who often felt misunderstood, that must have been huge. Having someone who accepts you, sees your worth, even in the bad times, that's validating, life-affirming even.
Makes you think about how important support systems are for everyone, not just artists.
Couldn't agree more. We all need people who cheer us on, who help us through tough times. And for Van Gogh, Theo was that anchor. It probably allowed him to keep going, to keep creating.
It's beautiful, really. It shows that even when things are rough, love and support can make all the difference. It's pretty incredible that a relationship like that could exist with everything else going on in Van Gogh's life. It really changes how you see him, you know?
Yeah, it shows that even with all his complexities and struggles, he still needed that deep human connection. And having Theo there, believing in him, even when he doubted himself, it probably helped him keep creating.
That's something we can all relate to, I think. Meeting people who believe in us, see our potential, all that.
It's so important, and it makes you think about how we view artists like Van Gogh. It's easy to romanticize that tortured genius thing.
But they were real people,
Yeah.
right, with real needs.
Exactly. And Van Gogh, he clearly craved connection, beauty, meaning in a world that often felt pretty harsh to him.
And that brings us back to the Enneagram, right? We've seen how this personality type, all the intense emotions, the striving, how that played out for him.
But what's really cool is that it helps us understand not just Van Gogh, but maybe even ourselves a little better.
That's what I love about these deep dives. We start with one person,
Hmm.
but it ends up being about so much more.
Right. Think about those core desires. Connection, beauty, meaning. Everyone wants those.
And we might not express them through art like he did, but we all deal with those needs in our own way.
Exactly. So as we wrap up, I want to leave you with this. Think about the people you know, artists you admire, even yourself. Do you see echoes of those traits?
That need to express something unique, to connect deeply, to find the beauty in everyday things, even when things are tough.
It's something to think about. And maybe, just maybe, seeing how all this played out for someone like Van Gogh, as extraordinary as he was, maybe it gives us some insight into our own inner worlds.
Our own creative sides even, and how we each find meaning in this crazy world.
Well said. And for anyone listening who wants to explore more, I highly recommend looking up some of the paintings we talked about. Sunflowers, Starry Night, The Yellow House. They're more than just pretty pictures. They're a glimpse into the soul of a man who, even with all his struggles, really left his mark on the world.
And if the Enneagram has you intrigued, definitely dive into that more too. It's a great tool for understanding yourself and other people.
It shows us that we all experience the world in our own unique way.
We all have that internal landscape that shapes how we do things, how we interact with others.
It's fascinating stuff.
It really is. And who knows, maybe by understanding ourselves a little better, we can all tap into a bit of that Van Gogh magic, that ability to see beauty where others don't, to express our own vision, to connect with something bigger than ourselves.
That's a powerful thought to end on.
It is. So thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of Vincent van Gogh. Until next time, keep exploring, keep creating, and keep looking for beauty in the everyday, just like he did.